Hello, it's Dr. Darnise. Welcome back into another episode. Come on in. We're going to be talking about this whole episode with Snoop and Rick Ross and Nelly and them who decided to perform at this inauguration, the activities around the inauguration. You know, you've heard some of our Black male entertainers have decided to go and perform at the inauguration. Okay, so my question for you though is, do all Black people have to think the same? Do all Black artists have to be on the same page? Now, of course, we're going to say Black people are not a monolith. We're all kinds of different people, right? We don't have to all be the same religion. Like, we don't all have to be Christian. We don't all have to be Muslim. We don't all have to think the same way politically. Is that so? So I'm going to ask you, what do you think? And I'm going to give you a little bit of history on how old this argument, these questions really are. Okay, so oftentimes Black people kind of expect other Black people to be on the same page politically, right? We know that there's Black conservatives, we know there's Black Republicans, but for the most part, most Black people are Democrats, or at least will vote for a Democrat. Okay. And therefore, when we see some of our celebrities out here doing things that lean conservative or are all the way over there with the conservatives, people like Candace Owens and such, we don't like it. We don't like it. We cancel them. We pull their Black card, all of that. Okay, but this is a conversation that asks us to think about, really, what does it mean to be free? If we're free Black people, do we always have to be Black first? Meaning, if I'm a writer, which I am, right? Am I a Black writer, or can I just be a writer? If I'm a Black actor, can I just be an actor? Do I always have to be a Black actor? Do I always have to carry the burden of the entire race on my shoulders as an artist? Is it too heavy to have to carry the weight of the race every time I put out a record, every time I put out, whatever show I'm in? Does every film I make have to make a statement? Okay, so I'm going to take y'all back a little bit. I'm going to take you back into the Harlem Renaissance and have us look at some history around the fact that this is not a new argument, right? We can look at Snoop and Nelly and all of them, right, and be like, oh, they have betrayed us. Well, maybe they have. But I ask you to consider, why is it that we as Black people insist that we all think alike, that we all do the same thing? Is that really fair? Is that really fair of us to ask that our artists do that, our celebrities do that? I'm sure you're going to have comments, and I really welcome them. But I want us to think back. Okay, during the Harlem Renaissance period, there was this same conversation. Does all the Black art have to talk about politics? Does all the Black art have to be about the uplift of Black people? Does all Black art, every Black author, every Black performance on the stage, every Black poem that's written, does everybody have to write a protest novel? Right? Later on, after the Harlem Renaissance, James Baldwin would write, not another protest novel. Not another protest novel, because he was tired of having to carry the burden, right? And it's just to say, because I love Baldwin, right? He gave us a lot, but it's just to say that when we're free people, we don't have to keep thinking about carrying the burden of the race. The privilege, part of the privilege of being white is that they don't have to do that. Individual artists don't have to do that. They make what they want to make. It doesn't reflect on the whole entirety of their race. But maybe we don't have that luxury. Maybe we don't have that luxury. And so some of the people's point of view, perspective is that, yes, when you are a Black person, when you are a Black writer, when you're a Black performer, when you are a Black songwriter, you should really be about the uplift of your people. Now, as I said, I want to know what you think about that. Does every Black artist have to be about the uplift of their people in everything that they make? Okay, so we look back at the Harlem Renaissance. There was a writer by the name of Gene Toomer, and I'm looking around at my bookshelves. I don't have his book out. It's in a box. Okay, I can't dig it out. Okay, but Gene Toomer was became a famous author and poet. Toomer, Toomer, Gene Toomer. And he was a very light skinned black man, very, very light skinned. And he could have passed if he wanted to pass, but he didn't. He was clear in his blackness. But what he said was, I don't want my articles, my poems, anything that I write, I don't want it to be in the Negro journals. I don't want it to be in the Negro journal. Why can't I just be an American writer? I'm an American. I'm not black first. I'm not Negro. I don't want my work to be categorized as Negro work, right? We can kind of get that. We get tired of having to be Negro first and carry the burden of the race. And what we're trying to say is, when will I ever just be accepted as a writer? And for him, he made the decision, listen, if it comes down to it, I'm not going to have my work published then. I just won't have it published because I'm not going to be published in just the so-called Negro journals. If it can't be published broadly in the American journals, I won't have it published anywhere. Now you may think, wow, that's rough. That's hard. You're going to cut off your money? And Gene Toomer said, yeah, I'd rather. And so one of the reasons why you might not have heard of Gene Toomer is because he basically just pulled the plug on his own career. Peace out. I'm not doing this. And people said to him, well, you have privilege because he was very light skinned. If you Google him, again, Gene Toomer, Toomer, and you look at him, you'll be like, yeah, he was white passing. He was not passing for white, but he was that light. So people are like, well, easier for you. You can find something else to do, blah, blah, blah. So, and then, he went on about his life and lived out the rest of his life without being, in the spotlight anymore. Now, there are other artists, and this is the book that I have handy, right? This is the great Alan Locke, who popularized the phrase the new Negro. W.E. Du Bois really taught us about this idea of the new Negro. The new Negro was an idea in juxtaposition to counter the idea of, sort of like the newly freed African American, free from slavery, who was basically illiterate, agricultural farmer type, who didn't have much formal education, and who was just basically at the bottom of the social order. The new Negro said, no, we're not that anymore. We have come up from just that rural sort of country, life that we had in slavery and down south. The new Negro is the cosmopolitan, well-educated, artistic Black person who lives in the major cities, right? W.B. Du Bois called them or called us the talented 10th. So the new Negro idea was that we have to present ourselves in the best possible way at all times. This thing called politics of respectability. We have to present ourselves in the best way at all times. And so I hold up this book once again because Alan Locke is one of the great figures of the Harlem Renaissance period. So that is how you spell his name if you want to look him up. He really does not get his due. He is really what is called the dean of the Harlem Renaissance, meaning he was the great curator. He was a scholar. He was he was the first African American to get a PhD from Harvard in philosophy. Du Bois got his PhD in sociology. So Locke got his PhD from Harvard in philosophy, and he was also the first Black Rhodes Scholar. So Alan Locke was an extremely intelligent person, right? He was brilliant. And he kind of orchestrated what Black artists would come up. He kind of orchestrated what Black artists would get published, if their artwork could hang in the galleries, who was going to be able to perform on the stage in Harlem, right? He really kind of ran things, right? He was the kingmaker. He was the top producer of the day, if you want to say. You had to go through Alan Locke if you were a Black artist and you were trying to come up. Okay, so Alan Locke set the stage where we're looking for a particular kind of Black artist and artistry. And you have to fit in. You have to fit in with Alan Locke's vision for trying to promote the race, right? We got to uplift the race. My phone is going off, y'all. We have to uplift the race. And if you are out here trying to trash us or, represent us in some backwards country kind of a way, then you're not going to get put on. Because I don't want to have us represented in any kind of backwoods kind of way. We're trying to get away from. So you must present us in the highest level, the highest standard. So only artists who did that could be on his good side. So, he had his people who he loved and those people who he helped and those people who he didn't. He really loved him some Langston Hughes, and so Langston got on, right? He really did not like Zora Neale Hurston, but he kind of liked her work. So to some degree, he helped Zora Neale Hurston too. But Zora was somebody who was very radical in the way she did her work, because if you read Their Eyes Were Watching God, she uses the African American vernacular. So ordinarily, Locke wouldn't like that, right? You're representing Black people in this old country kind of way, uneducated, that we're trying to get away from. But he said, you know what, Zora? I'll roll with you. I'll roll with you on this book because I think it's a form of poetry. He said about it. This is actually a form of poetry. So we're gonna roll with it, Zora. But ordinarily he didn't really like her, and ordinarily he wouldn't have put her on. So let's fast forward a little bit past the Harlem Renaissance and talk about Richard Wright. Y'all know Richard Wright. He wrote Native Son, among a whole lot of other books, right? And he was always writing a protest novel. Always saying, Black people have a particular experience in America, and every artist, especially every writer, needs to speak to the situation that Black people are in for the uplift, right? You got to call out the injustice. If you're going to write a story about Black life, you got to talk about how gritty it is, how hard it is, how unjust it is. That's the only kind of work he recognized as being worthy. So Richard Wright did not like Zora Neale Hurston because he thought, oh, this is poetic, and you're trying to romanticize these backwoods Black people. But, what is this? What is this? Is some kind of like poem or love song? What is this? This is not doing the work, right? We should our work should be doing the work of uplifting the Black people and talking about the injustice. So that was Richard Wright. And he became a mentor to James Baldwin. So Baldwin's a little bit younger than Wright. And so he mentors James Baldwin, and he takes him, even provides a way for him to go to Paris, right? A lot of Black artists, a lot of Black writers moved to Paris. And so Richard Wright made away from it. But he said to Baldwin, look, man, you're going to have to write some protest novels. You over here writing these romance books and writing all this, whatever you want to write in terms of novels. You're going to have to talk about real life for Black people. And Baldwin said, oh, not another protest novel. You can Google that, not another protest novel. We as Black people are tired of having to write and read a protest novel. We get tired of it. We want to be free to create the things we want to create. When am I ever free? When am I ever free to just write whatever I want to write? And so I come back to my original question to you. Is it possible that Black people can be free enough? Is it possible that we can look at Snoop and Nelly and Soulja Boy and Rick Ross and say, well, I guess they free Black people? Kanye too, I guess. Is that a thing? I'm really interested in what you have to think about that, especially if you've hung in with me 13 something minutes in. Because it's something that we keep revisiting. And as we look at them performing at the inauguration and, defending their position, what do you think? How are we going to say to other Black people, no, you're not allowed? And if you step out of the bonds, out of these, across the line, then you're no longer Black. I don't know. I just felt like coming on and giving y'all a little bit of historical context to what we're seeing now with the backlash against Snoop and them. And I really, frankly, myself, if you're wondering what I'm thinking, I just, especially with Snoop, he got so much money. He out here, got commercials for everything. It couldn't be that he need the money. So what is he really doing? I don't know. But I look forward to your comments. Please do leave me some comments. And that's it. Bye for now.